Hello, and thank you for joining us on the Workplace in Progress podcast. This is a new RICOH Digital Experience podcast that we're producing where we talk around all of the things relating to the workplace and the workplace experience. And joining me here today is Nathan Thomas, Jade Bliss, and our very special guest speaker, Mike Baddeley, who has joined us from Ricoh Europe. Mike, if you could just introduce yourself a little bit and tell us a bit about what you do.
Yeah, sure. I've been at Ricoh for a ridiculous amount of time, probably over 30 years. But the reason I guess I'm here is that in 10 years ago, 2013, I led the project called New Ways of Working, which was to redesign and re-engineer our office space, which is quite interesting because a lot of the things that we were talking about suddenly became very quickly reality when COVID hit. And we talk a lot about change management, but it shows how things can be quite enforced during things like the COVID period. I think what's really interesting in this bit now is exploring what that future of work actually looks like and what the future place the office has within that space.
I remember New Ways of Working. When I first joined Ricoh 7 years ago in the UK, I remember New Ways of Working was like hot desking and making the offices look a bit nicer and adding in these like colour schemes. And we refreshed all of our office spaces to make them look pretty much exactly the same, but these nice vibrant colours and taking the offices away from all of the executives and making them sit on the open floor plan with the rest of us. So, I mean, how did those kinds of transformations happen, and what are you seeing? Is there any kind of comparison to what we've gone through over the last couple of years?
I think so. It's interesting what you've mentioned there because it's almost like an iceberg. The bit you saw was a bit at the top, which is the colourful offices, the new carpets, the shiny things, the naming of the rooms. What sat underneath that was trying to change behaviour and that was really difficult. A really difficult thing to shift because prior to New Ways of Working, we had office space for execs and for managers. We had a lot of people that used desktop computing. I remember a big discussion as to what we did around laptops and, did we give everybody laptops? Because at that point it was seen almost as a perk or as a status symbol. So there was a whole...
Insane.
It's incredible. It's incredible. But there was this whole shift of movement, and then what we then started to look at what the office space looks like. Do we have offices or not have offices? So taking all of the offices, getting the board members and the leaders to sit in open plan spaces, which today seems completely normal.
Yeah. And how much of a big change was that for directors who were used to be in offices?
Huge change. So I reported into Rick Hewitt at the time, who was the FD of the UK, and he was a sponsor of the project, and he was supportive of it, and he absolutely hated it at the same time because... he had, and to give him his due, he had his office space. He knew where everything was. It was all very well organised. He had little knickknacks in there, and he'd got into this habit. And so, for him to clear everything out and to move that space and literally just go to everything in a bag was a big change.
I must admit, though. This was about 7 years ago, so I'd have been in the business maybe a year, just over a year. And I think for me, being quite young myself and also being young in the business, it was a huge shift for me to be able to walk into Broadgate Tower and just see the directors sitting there. And almost they felt more accessible than ever before, and there was real people, and I could go and talk to them if I needed to or wanted to, or say even just good morning. Whereas the hierarchy before that just seemed they was closed off behind an office, and they wasn't for people like me to even wave to. So I think the behaviour, as you say, and not just for the directors themselves, but everyone else, it just was a lot more open and a lot more inclusive, really.
Yeah, and I think from my experience as well, like when I joined after obviously all this had taken place, all I've ever known in an office is for the directors and the executives to be sat out in the open. It doesn't make them any less important. It doesn't make them feel like any less scary at first when you see them there. But it, as you said, it makes them more affable, more approachable, and it allows you to actually build a bit more of a relationship, and it makes it not so. I mean, especially with someone who's quite young joining the business. I think it's a bit of ahead of its time, really.
I think we look at change moving slowly, but when you reflect in these chunks like 7 years, the difference then is incredible. We had whole meetings on whether we wear ties or not in the new world.
Yeah, that was the thing. I remember when I first joined, and it was like, oh, here's the clothing policy. Great thing is, You don't have to wear a tie anymore. Still suit.
Yeah.
You don't have to have your top button done up though.
And it was all of these rituals and formalities that have been there for years, and this was the challenge, which is how would you break that? And creating new space really kind of knocks a big hole in that, because even CEOs come into a space which is into a new office, and the human bit kicks in, and they go, right, what's the rules now? So they're looking at instant behaviour change, and that's what it was. But the outward bit was what you mentioned, the colourful bits, all of that dramatic change from where we previously have was all part of that change management and changing behaviours.
I think like we were talking about earlier, Mike, when you're saying about it, there was a behaviour change that had to happen from going out of set offices out onto an open floor plan. And it's the same now, a behaviour change with this whole remote and hybrid working and everything, and how you interact with your colleagues. That's all it is. It's interaction with colleagues, and it's behaviour changes that are going to come with it. So I think what happened when we first went into lockdown and we were doing virtual pub meetings and lunch breaks and quizzes, that was a bit of a knee-jerk response to, oh my God, nobody's going to talk to each other anymore. Let's try and arrange as many things as possible so we can make sure that people can still talk to one another. Now it's been a few years. We are settling in. We're learning. And I think, so to your point, Mike, I think you're right. It's just going to be a gradual behavioural change, a mental change, and it's going to become more appropriate to reach out to people who aren't in the office and just start more of those informal conversations. I mean, my manager, Kieran, she talks about it quite a bit, where she's like, sometimes it might be a good idea to just, if you and a colleague have got to work on something and you're not going to be in the office, just jump on a Teams call together. You don't have to chat. You don't have to say anything, but it almost simulates that working side by side with one another. So you can pop up and say, like, have you seen what this person said in this group chat and stuff? And can you if I send you the link, can you just jump onto this help desk ticket and help me figure out what's going on here? So I'm not saying that's the solution. I'm not saying that's the best way of doing it, but I think we are gradually going to learn more ways of bringing people together.
We're experimenting and learning new skills that we've never had to do before, and employees have to learn those new skills. Managers have got to learn those new skills, but actually employees and managers are just people. So as a group, we've got to learn these new skills. The other big element that goes into this, I think, is around leadership. And I think leadership of organisations have got to learn new skills around what virtual leadership is. To create a vision of what the organisation is and what the organisation can achieve, and for everybody to feel part of it. To do that in a face-to-face, it's probably no coincidence that a lot of our traditional leaders are, tall and charismatic and all that kind of stuff, because it's their physical presence. To do that if you take Simon Sinek, just one that immediately jumps to mind, I'm inspired by watching him on what he does, because he can now lead in a virtual space. It's a different skill set. I think there's a new skill set for leaders as much as there are for individuals, and it's all of this change. It's fascinating.
I think the other thing is as well that I think there's a lot of organisations that are working a lot more, because of the technology that we have, a lot of organisations are working a lot more on global capacities. So that means, your line manager could be in a different country or even a completely different continent. So how do you manage that relationship? And, it's great that the technology enables us to do it, but how are you going to make sure that it's effective and, working for both people involved?
That's where the change management comes in. I think if you take it right back to where you started around the new ways of working, that was an initiative. It was thought out, it was planned, and it was implemented. Before it was, those people didn't necessarily start doing what they are doing now and what's deemed to be normal. So these kind of things that we're talking about now, we need to consider how we do it, how we help people get there. It might be more natural for one person to do something over something else, but how do you framework it in a way so that it's easy for them to start doing it, or at least get down the journey, or know that it's possible? I think if you're a certain kind of person that will just do something because you think it's the right thing, you'll do it. But if you don't know that it's a possibility, you just won't. If you don't know that it's okay to leave slightly earlier because you need to, you will never do it. And then you'll complain about the person that doesn't go in, well, why did I get to leave early? Because they're just doing it. So with all these kind of just call somebody and have a chat, or it's okay to not be online permanently whilst you're at home, or it's okay to pop out and go to the gym at lunch, or whatever it might be. Those kind of frameworks need to be set at a leadership level and at an organisation level to say, this is how we handle hybrid work, remote work, office work. These are the things that we want you to encourage. We want to encourage you to do, and this is the way that you could do it. You don't have to do it this way, but
it's leadership by example.
Why don't you
isn't
try
it?
that? Yeah,
It's completely leadership, and whereas leadership by example in the past was very formal and very structured and very managed. Actually, it may be now that the future leadership is being, as a manager, not coming in at the first thing in the morning and leaving last thing at night.
Yeah.
Not making sure that the cat doesn't walk past your video screen. Actually being more authentic and more human.
Being real.
Because what it does then is it takes the pressure and it releases the employees to know, because we don't pay people on whether their cat goes in front of the screen or not. That's not their output. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. But actually, it's the manager that can set that tone, I think.
I completely agree. And I've been more conscious recently than I ever have, because there's a lot of people in the team, and I've found that they make decisions based on what I'm doing. I've genuinely heard people say, "I'm here late because you're here late," and I think that's
you
that's
came in
insane.
this morning and said, 16 minutes past 9, Nathan, and you went, "Oh, I worked till blah 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 last night."
Exactly.
There was this little interaction there.
It's here later than you, though.
but the thing with that is that was very informal and very relaxed and almost jokey, which is there was messaging on both sides of that, which is this is okay, this is okay, this is okay,
Yeah.
we're all cool.
Yeah, you can come in late. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I think that's an issue for like new starters as well. I think a lot of people are conditioned into this, either from their previous work or what they've done before, or conditioned by this belief that we've had growing up that 9 to 5, you need to be there, you don't want to upset your boss, all this kind of stuff. So if you do see your superiors or the leadership team staying quite late, then it's not incentivizing. It will just make you think that you've got to be there quite late. But I think, you're right. It's setting that tone, setting that understanding right from the start, onboarding package, and saying to people, or having those, when you got, if companies have like town hall meetings or big presentations from their leadership teams, where they should set the tone and say, because there's a lot of ambiguity. That's the problem. It's
absolutely.
the ambiguity. Is it okay? Is it not okay? And just say right from the start, from the top down,
Yeah.
if you need to leave for an emergency, go. If you want to clock off at 4:30 one day and come in at 8:30 the next day, do it. If and that's one thing that I love about the flexibility that we have. I've spoken to my manager before. I had to have an emergency dental appointment because I've got bad wisdom teeth, and it was knowing that I wouldn't have to be like, oh, I hope she approves this. I hope she approves this so I can go off. I'm not going to be in this morning. I've got to go to the dentist. I'll catch up with you a bit later. And it's that underlying understanding right from the start. And that means I can do what I need to. And if anything, it makes me a more satisfied employee. It makes me actively want to give back because it's just been accepted, no questions asked. And it also makes me I'm still checking teams and stuff. I want to make sure that I'm not taking the mickey either.
It's that move away from how many hours have you worked this week to what's been your output this week, and did you achieve what we thought you was going to? Because I have a young child, so my schedule often goes completely out the window. But with my manager, I always have the conversation of, this is what I'm trying to achieve this week. And, based on the things that's happening with my schedule, it's the conversation of, can I still achieve those things? Not, I will do that hour that I've lost this week in the morning, or it's nothing to do with time. It's to do with, this is what I said I'd do. And yes, I'm still okay to do that.
Well, I'm quite grateful, actually. But I think I'm in a quite privileged position because on day one, when I came into RICOH as an apprentice in the marketing department, my first line manager said to me, the way that we work here is, or the way that I manage at least, is you've got a project, you've got a deadline. I don't care how you get there, as long as it's done by the set date, fine. And, there was still the rules that we did have to come into the office every day, and we did have to wear suits, but with no tie. But there was that flexibility and trust from day one. Don't care how you do it, just as long as it's done by the deadline.
Yep. I think trust is key to building loyalty, and no matter what generation you're part of, and whether you're a new starter or you've been here 8 years, knowing that you're trusted to do your job, and you can set your own hours. I mean, people have different needs as well. Some people have sensory issues, or they would like to work at in the night, or on their own space. So I think the world of flexible work, and the future is output, not time. It's got to be key, and that'll allow people to have a happier home life as well, because I can spend more time with my child, or I'm just simply more productive outside of core office hours, for example. And then, as you say, the office still has a place, and it very much has a place, but it's the collaboration side of it. It's the what can I do better in the office than at home? That for me is key. So what problems can I solve in the office?
Yeah, 'cause I think we're talking about the workplace and it being a work in progress, and it's post-COVID has now put us in a space where everybody's really at the extremes of experimenting.
Yes.
Before we had this really careful, structured discussion around new ways of working. Do we wear a tie? Do we not wear a tie? There was little baby steps to try and get to where we needed to do. And then COVID threw this big bomb in the middle, which went, everybody could just work as they want. Well, they've got to work this way. And then coming out of it, it's made everybody a lot more open to those experimenting.
Yeah,
but where you talk about ambiguity, it is ambiguous. Leaders and managers have not got a black and white plan anymore. Yeah. They're experimenting as much as we're experimenting.
Yeah, that's fair
and
point.
everybody's got to get used to that ambiguity. It'll get, as we get better, as we get further along, we'll develop new skills.
Changing behaviour,
and the more changing behaviour. But we're dealing with a completely new world and some new tools.
Yeah, because it's interesting when you look at what a lot of offices and organisations are trying to do. We've seen recently in the news not too long ago that I can't remember who it was now. I think it was like Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan are now I don't want to say forcing, I think that's the wrong word, but mandating that their senior employees come back into the office every single day. And because what they want to do is lead by example. And if the seniors come in, that will encourage more of the lower level employees to come in as well. There's a lot of businesses that I think are just setting rules and just being like, this is how it's going to work now, and not doing that like experimental approach. But I think there's also a lot of organisations who are, and it's trying to get that mix. It's trying to understand what works best and what's right. And it's I don't know where you start with it.
Controversially though, I think we need to still realise that you are an employee of your business. Yep. I think it's very easy to have a conversation around flexibility, what you think you should be able to do. However, you are paid for by that organisation.
That's true.
And if they mandate 5 days in the office, you either like it, you can voice your opinion, but if it doesn't change, your decision needs to be, I'm either okay with it or I'm going to go and work somewhere else. Yeah. I don't think we can necessarily say that it's wrong to be in the office 5 days a week, because it's worked for a lot of businesses for a lot of time. Yep. And I've seen research that has suggested that flexible working for some organisations just doesn't work. And you're talking around output. Mm-hmm. If you are unable to measure output, it's hard to actually know whether you are doing the right thing. You spoke about getting your project done by the right time. That could force the wrong behaviour or the right behaviour. It could be actually you're able to get that done in a week, but you've been given 2 weeks and you're going to chill out for 7 days.
Yeah,
and or it could be that there was no way you were going to achieve it, so you're working 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
So I think we really need to consider how we measure absolutely everything, how people's output is, how they are feeling, how they are working in the office, how they aren't working in the office, to be able to make informed decision about what should actually happen.
You can't generalise on this because it's all depending on the nature of the role that you do.
Yes.
So, train drivers can't work from home, for example. There's certain occupations that require physical presence. There's certain occupations that is based on piecework. So the amount they do is the amount of value that they add to the organisations.
Yeah.
But there's other roles, and this is where the real interesting, other roles where a 20-minute inspiration or piece of creativity can produce 12 months worth of value for an organisation. And that's really, so I don't know whether it's software creation, or whether it's product creation, or it might be making music or art or whatever. You can have some things where the value, so you give someone sit in a room or doing nothing for 5 weeks and then just do something like that changes.
Well,
there's a massive difference on
yeah,
roles.
I mean, I saw a video about that. This guy teaching a group of students about like logo creation and stuff, and it says, well, if you pay me by the hour, I'm going to take as long as possible to create that logo or do that piece of work, because you're paying me by the hour. But if you pay me by the, but if I just set a base rate, this is going to take me, it might take me 20 minutes. I'm going to charge you £20,000 for it, but that's going to give you a logo that you can use for years and will create a bunch of value for you. But what my question is how does an organization start that journey? How do they understand their employees, the work that needs to be doing, and find the right balance? And what other things can they bring to the workplace to give employees the best workplace experience?
It's been mentioned a few times today, but I think data, actually there's two elements to this. There's data, and then the interpretation of data that's absolutely critical to this. Nathan's
Critically
smiling.
critical.
Yeah. Critically critical. But and it was, again, if you just take the workspace and how you design the workspace, there's been 100 voices around what I like, what I don't like, and actually in an organisation there's thousands of those voices. The behaviour of people is the ultimate measure of whether they like that workspace or not.
Yeah. And not necessarily what they say. It's what
not
they
what
do.
It's not what they say. Yeah. Surveys don't measure anything really. They give a single snapshot, and people will change and be biased.
Well, it shows how they're feeling at that very moment in
exactly.
time.
Or how they think they're feeling at that time.
Yeah.
It's how they behave. And this is where I think we're in a space now where we've got an abundance of data, and we've got some amazing tools that can actually start to understand that data and draw those facts out. And I think I think in the next 12 months we'll see a shift from having to put in measurement systems and collect data to actually look at what we've got already and build up the affinities between that data, which then drives the behaviours and planning. Yep. And that then is a model that you can apply to a train driver as much as you can apply to a creative in an office. Mm-hmm. What we've had to do in the past is go, how do we measure train drivers? How do we measure creatives in an office? Whereas now I think, look at the multitude of data collection systems we've got and the amount of data and it's not used. All of this data in organisation is not being pushed anywhere because it's so, with big data problem, it's how do you do this?
It's really hard.
With AI and with ChatGPT, I'll throw it in there in the mix now. But with that, it gives us the ability to learn from that data and see patterns that we've never seen before without having to go, hey, could you do another survey for me? Which is
continuously measurable. And we've spoken a lot of times around how do you measure more things and what things do you need to measure? And then from those measurements, what could you possibly do? I know from the team in Japan, when we were talking around the necklaces that they have now.
And the 3L building.
Yes, and they're experimenting with the ability to just understand who's speaking to who and when they're speaking to who. And it opens up a lot of doors to actually say, oh, it looks like I might be able to actually measure engagement. Mm-hmm. And at first you go, why would I want to measure engagement? And then afterwards you start thinking, well, I know that if Jade is coming to the office, she's not actually speaking to anybody. So that's either, again, the interpretation could be that she's sitting in the corner and she's not very happy.
Got my headphones on.
Or it could be that actually maybe Jade would perform better at home, but then you don't know whether Jade is performing better at home, so you need more data. Yep. And if you start measuring engagement, you start measuring environment, you start measuring output, you can then hopefully start to draw some conclusion about how things are. But again, it needs to be continuous, and you also need to be very careful around how you interpret that data, because what you're then not measuring, which is what I haven't mentioned, is personality and how people actually work, whether they are asynchronous workers, whether they night, whatever, which is why in some of the stuff that we're doing, we're looking at more profile management, more social media style profiles, because if we kind of know who you are and how you work, we can anonymously start to recommend work patterns or colleagues that you might work with the best. And it's just a game of gathering as much data as possible, and then it's a game of using
against
tools.
the backdrop of data privacy.
Yes.
And that's the real balance between the two, because in reality we've got all that data now. We could point to tools towards our entire content of emails that have ever been sent, with all our teams' data that's been swapped, with all of our movement data, with our office space. You could chuck all that and you could make assumptions on that. You may find, that Roger in Aberdeen has a nap at 3 o'clock till 5 o'clock every day.
Yeah.
And so there's things within there that you could find out, but then you've got the balance of the ethics and data privacy that sits with it. So it's it's an interesting balance, but we've never had this challenge before.
We did a big project not long ago, an art project, art thinking. It was new to me at the time. It was a precursor to design thinking, and privacy of these elements was really key. And one of the things that we said would be a good idea is not actually having an individual have access to any of this information, and putting it into an AI that could do something with it and only provide you the output rather than actually the thinking within there and the data that it used to get to that conclusion. And then we started talking around what seem like crazy ideas now but might not be, is visually representing that in the office in a physical way, so that if we knew that Jade had less sleep last night, and when Jade has less sleep, she struggles more, or she doesn't speak as much, or maybe she's snappy. I don't know what Jade's like after less sleep. Then how do you do that without putting a big red thing on Jade's desk saying "Don't speak to Jade"? But we spoke about something weird. It was a tree, and the idea was having a physical tree but it's not like an actual tree, like a tree that had lights and leaves, and it was kind of brighter when everyone was at the top of their game based on how they normally work, and dimmer maybe when the mood was a little bit lower, just so that there was a visual cue to go, oh, hang on, maybe today isn't the best day to say, should we all go to the pub for beers because there's a different mood in the office or a different atmosphere. So it's how do you subtly allow people to know how to react to the vast amount of data without giving me the ability to interpret it in a way that might be wrong.
Yeah, I think you can segment the data as well. So if we're talking previously around offices and what works for offices, whether it's desks, whether it's spaces, there's a lot of data that we could collect that was anonymised around a specific topic, which is just the office space and how it's used and how people prefer to use it, and creating that loop of behaviour drives office design drives change, and then change drives behaviour change, and finding clever ways of doing that. And that doesn't then start to monitor how snappy Jade is. What it does is it looks.
Why am I the example in this?
So, as I said, there's kind of layers there's layers of things. I think quick wins almost that we could start to explore around moving away from my opinion is what we need to have is all desks or all open spaces to a more data led, based on people's behaviours. And
snapshots. One thing that I'm excited about trying to do is, can you take a snapshot of 4 weeks? What your office design was, what your policies were, what your hybrid work policy was, and then measure what happened, make a change, and then do another snapshot in a month and compare them. It's something you see in product development, you see in anything where you do A/B testing, you give two different people 2 versions of the app and then put them together and then make a third version. We need to start being able to do that at rapid pace within a workplace so that we can understand what impact we have with our changes. Otherwise, we're just going to start making changes and hope it makes a difference.
And that is absolutely a technology exploration. And I think, most organisations would be happy to do those experiments if they've got multi-offices to kind of go, okay, we do this, but they haven't got the tools to actually monitor that. So it's a really interesting kind of concept.
Yeah, I think this podcast is about the perfect office, I think, and I think you're right that the perfect office is the one that's ready to continually evolve. We know that things have shifted since COVID, and we know that certain things like more plants and things like that are the things that are going to bring people back today. But I also know that my 2-year-old son isn't going to care about plants in 16 years' time, and he's probably going to be controlled by robots and ChatGPT. So it's
you say that. But actually, I've got another statistic here for you, and it does say that introducing plants into the office has got a significantly positive effect on occupants' perceived attention, creativity, and productivity.
How are they measuring that? That's what I'd like to know.
Where's the data?
I think it's okay. Yeah, fair.
From
I don't have the
Sellers
data
Weekly
in front of me, but I think it's But I think it's just one of those things, surrounding yourself by plants and stuff. You're introducing more oxygen into the environment as well, which is always helpful, especially if you... The problem I have with this office is that I end up sitting in this building all day.
Yep.
And fine, we've got like, air systems, aircon and whatever, but I don't know, a bit of greenery dotted around the place might
and
be
also,
quite nice.
and how do you know the air quality is good? So we're experimenting with a sensor out there right now that will tell you that the air quality is objectively good.
Yep.
It is a good, and it's helping you in certain ways. I don't know, concentrate or whatever it might be, and then that's where you can start to measure. You put the plant in. Is the air quality better? Hopefully, it's a real plant. And then, have you performed better? Have you engaged more? That's where, with more of these measuring devices, you can put these in and actually see what impact it really does make on your working place.
The mechanism's simple. We're evolved apes, and so we like we like to be outside. We like natural light. We like plants. We like we like social contact. So you can almost go right back and go, okay, what does this little society of apes actually want? And then how do you measure that in the workspace? Because anecdotally, everything you mentioned is what apes like. They like plants, they like fresh air, they like social contact, they like sleep.
I like snack. Okay, here's a question that I've got for you then, before we start to wrap up, is what is kind of the ideal workplace for you? And let's say if a company was building an office and they were going to provide things like nice views, free food, on-site gym and leisure facilities and stuff, would you come in every day for that?
Yes, I would personally, but that's just me. And again,
I'm assuming this is a personal question, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's got to be, right?
What would you?
Yeah.
I think if the personal office, if the perfect office existed, absolutely, I would come in every day for that.
Your personal office.
Would you?
It would be next door to
personal
my
perfect.
house.
Would you come in for those
like
at
commuting.
the sacrifice of pay? If you had all of those amenities available for you, but would you take a pay cut for it?
I think the way I would answer that question before going on to pay is, who else is there? Is it a mandatory everyone in the office? Because if I'm coming into this perfect office by myself, then no, I'm not.
Okay, that's an
For
interesting
me,
point.
I'm coming to the office is collaboration. It's others. So yeah, I think if it's a mandatory, everyone's back in. Would I be able to come along with that? I think as long as everyone else is back in and the collaboration is good and everyone feels good about that. Yes, but no, I wouldn't just sit in a perfect office by myself.
You wouldn't be able to come to my perfect office because there wouldn't be anybody there.
Okay.
No, but really everybody's got a different view of what perfect
But
office is.
Are we asking what the perfect workplace is, or are we asking what the perfect workspace is?
What's the
Because
difference?
your workspace can be anywhere that you are currently working.
That's true.
That could be the coffee shop down the road.
Yep.
That could be a communal workplace that allows multiple companies, because that's where you get your inspiration from, talking to somebody else that does a different job.
Yeah, that's true.
Or it could be your personal workspace at home, and it could be that organisations need to do a better job at helping your home workspace be better than it is. Because we said that you might come into the workplace because you don't have the tools at home. Why can't you have the tools at home if it's deemed that being at home is the best place for you personally to be able to work? We should enable that.
I think it goes back to that whole thing again of looking at the data and understanding how your employees work best in the office. And I guess one last question. One thing that I was, because we had a few guests in this week over the course of it, and I was talking to one of them about the way that Netflix works and operates in the US, and they found that a lot of employee dissatisfaction was coming from commuting into the office. So what they did is they implemented their own shuttles that go and pick people up from their neighborhoods and bring people to the office. And I said straight away, I would come in every single day if my travel was sorted, either made more convenient or free. The fact that both of those factors affect me. It takes me quite a long time to get into the office, and it can be quite costly. That deters me from coming in every day. So if you forget none of those other fringe benefits that we were talking about before, free food and snacks and
The gym.
and all this stuff, and an on-site gym, because I'm happy with the gym that I subscribe to. But if my travel was taken care of, I'd be in every day, because then it's just a lot easier. It's convenience factor.
And this is the challenge that organisations face, because you want travel, you want gym, I want quiet space, no commuting. I
There's
don't,
no
I
one
don't,
size
I don't
fits all
want free
solution.
channel because travel because of the sustainability and carbon impact of it. Me personally, so it's how do organisations create one shoe that fits everybody?
I'm not asking for like a
that.
private chauffeur
Yeah.
to come and pick me up from my house, but like
jet.
if I
Yeah.
was given a free train pass,
Yeah.
so I could just hop on.
Or subsidised, yeah, something towards the ability
No,
for you
free.
to get in. Yeah. No, but yeah, I think you're completely right because you need to build the perfect office, but that needs to be the flexible office
It's not
for the
just the
people that are
perfect
doing there.
office though; it's the perfect workplace experience.
Yep.
That's what this all is,
It is.
really. It's not a location. At the end of the day, an office is an office, and that's never going to be perfect for everyone. It's the
It
perfect
could
workplace
be. It could be for
experience
the people inhabiting
from
it.
start to finish.
If you are able to, if Mike likes his quiet, I like my collaboration and Jim's, and you like to get in, we could take a mix of those requirements. If we're listening, we can feed it in. We can observe Mike's behaviour. Is he coming in 3 days a week now, more than he used to? And is he using the quiet spaces that we've provided? Yes, yes, and yes. And then we ask Mike in a survey inside the tool, how are you feeling about your office? Do you like the quiet space? Yes, but maybe I'm also enjoying the non-quiet spaces one of the days of the week. And then we understand that. And then maybe we need to build more collaboration, more open areas to just talk into, or I don't know, maybe you need an on-site coffee shop because you found that that's going to make a big impact to the people that are working there. It's that listening and measuring and then evolving.
I think we need to look at the extremes. I think what we hear is it's easy when everyone's at home and it's easy when everyone's in the office, and it's where there's a mixture of both that's where everyone's starting to struggle a little bit. So for me, it's how do businesses that have everyone back in the office, what works well, what doesn't? People that have fully remote workforces surely have quite good onboarding processes to make sure people do become part of the culture. And well, yeah, you'd hope so. And if so, what can we learn from that?
Yeah.
And how can we get a mixture of both to make sure that? And I just think we need what the things we've taken for granted by being in the office no longer exist, and we need to have a little bit more structure and organisation and effort around how we do have a collaborative workforce that can exist both in person and remotely. And I just think we need to learn from
But are
both
we missing
extremes.
something key here? We're talking about workspaces and offices, but what is the ideal for the business to achieve whatever their goals are?
Absolutely.
I think that's a good question.
Yep.
I think the immediate one thing that I'd like to consider is firstly, no sacred cows. Just because it's something that we've always done doesn't mean it has to be the way that we continue to do it. And two, no idea is a bad idea.
Yeah.
Let's not immediately dismiss things. So let's say, we should provide shuttles for people to get into work. No, why would we do that? That's going to cost loads. Is it going to cost loads? If you eliminated, firstly, the travel costs of everyone coming into the office, and if people are going to different locations, then they're going to be expensing it. Two, the carbon emissions that it's going to be emitting. You could, let's say it was a train pass that every employee is provided with a free train pass. Then you're massively offsetting your carbon emissions, which is going to be saving you cost and contributing towards any ESG goals that the organisation has. And you then compare those costs. Okay, it's going to cost us £3 million a year to provide that to employees. That's insane. But actually, it's going to offset £4 million worth of carbon emissions, travel costs, expenses, and lost
Unhappiness,
productivity,
people
employee
leaving.
dissatisfaction.
Yep.
You've got to think those, and actually, so I would think it would be good for those decision makers, executives, to really take on all ideas, no matter how far-fetched or crazy they may seem, because when you compare it, if again you have the data, and especially if you can visualize that data, when you can compare it against it and say, actually, it will be more cost effective for us to provide these facilities to our employees. And it's going to make it not only better for us, and we'll save money, and we make our shareholders and stakeholders happier, we're going to improve employee satisfaction rates as well, and it's going to contribute to our overall company objectives.
And there's one thing that we haven't explored, which I think is worth exploring. And you ever notice that you're never far away from a McDonald's? And McDonald's locations aren't just there by chance. They go into meticulous planning to understand where their high footfall will be, where their customers are, where their gaps are. And at the moment, we're still talking about the the physical workspace and the office being in the office, the places that they've always been.
Yeah.
However, I haven't seen any organisation or spoke to any organisation that is debating whether they have more smaller office, they have lots of them. Maybe it's better if there's actually an office closer to your house because there are 10 other employees that would also like to be there, but maybe it's not huge. Maybe it's something for you guys to collaborate in.
Yeah.
What if there's one at the end of every road? What if there's more shared spaces? We don't know what will be good in the future and what might work and what might be better. Maybe we do need to just remove the idea of having one big floor for an organisation in central London or whatever your capital city is, that no matter where you live in that country, you have to travel all the way in to get there.
Yeah.
That's part of the problem.
I think it's human-centric. No matter what, I think the organisations that are going to be the ones that go on to be successful in this sort of really evolving landscape we find ourselves in are the ones that are human-centric, because if you've got happy people and people that are doing their jobs well and they're productive, if we go through another massive period of change, those are the organisations that are going to be ready to accept that, because they're human-centric and they'll do what's best for their employees and their business will continue. So yeah, everything you've just said there, for me, it's what's best for the employees. And you mentioned earlier, what's best for the business? How do we make sure the business stays productive? For me, by making sure the employees are happy and they're comfortable and they're able to do their jobs in the best way possible. So I think that's where it all comes back to the employee experience, hybrid working, what makes sense. It's the data, trying to understand what do employees want, what does the future of work look like, and how can businesses iteratively get there over the course of many years. It's not today, it's 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and continuously. I don't think it'll ever stop past this point now.
Continuously evolve.
I think there's some really key themes that have come out. Data's obviously one of them, and how we use data to plan and change our working space, not losing sight that the working space is there to underpin and to support the objectives of the organisation and the company you work for. I think having a good understanding of what you're trying to achieve, are you trying to reduce costs? Is that what you're trying to do? Or are you trying to create an environment where people can work together? There's a lot of discussions around internally working out what you want to achieve, getting the data, not forgetting at all about the humanistic side of it, which is then understanding what the needs and requirements of their employees. And that's not just asking them, it's actually in the data already when they've got there. But I do like what you said around actually not having any rules on the table, starting from a fresh view. I think that to me is probably the most important one. Yep. We had a conversation with a customer just before COVID, and we were talking about it. He said, we can't get rid of our offices because of this, and this. And I said, well, imagine if your company, how much is your budget for your real estate? And it was about 4.5 million or something. I said, if your company was working successfully now with the number of employees that you've got, could you justify spending 4.5 million to suddenly create offices for people to work? He said, no, not at all. He said, silly, but he said, we can't operate without our offices. Yeah. And I spoke to the same guy after COVID, and he was laughing. And he said, you know what? He said, our organisation has worked perfectly well without £4.5 million worth of real estate. Yeah. And so breaking our preconceptions, I think, is where this journey starts. And then it's data, it's people, it's creating the space based on the objectives and needs of the organisation.
Some really fantastic, really interesting points. Thank you all guys for your input and for joining me here today. Nath, Jade, I mean, you're here all the time, so I appreciate you jumping into this room and joining.
Only a couple of days a week.
Yeah, well, that's true. Mike, thank you so much for being our special guest on this episode of the Workplace in Progress podcast. We really appreciate you making the journey into this office, and I hope that the travel's been all right for you. And
especially since your favourite office is at home and empty. So thank you very much.
We've really forced you out of your comfort zone here for this one, but we really do appreciate it. And for everyone who is listening and watching, and you may have noticed that the camera angle has changed because the camera has switched off, so we've had to quickly change to another one. Really appreciate you joining us here today with this episode of Workplace in Progress. We hope that the topics that we've gone over have been interesting for you to listen to, and we'd love to get your feedback as well. So if you have any questions, any comments, or you would like to contribute to the conversation, please feel free to leave it in the comments section, whichever platform that you are listening to this or watching this on. We really appreciate you joining us here for this. You can also follow our social media channels. Our LinkedIn page is at RICOH Spaces, and we post regular updates there, and we'll be posting some of the highlights from this session as well. Thank you all again for joining me. Thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you in the next episode of Workplace in Progress.